This also ties into what I term the Dualistic Conceptual Framework and how it relates to the frequencies of perception. Essentially, the Dualistic Framework is basically how judgments work, how assessment works, how diagnosis works, how evaluation works. I wrote the articles about the Dualistic Conceptual Framework, and I did an audio and video about it with visual images in order to help people who have difficulty understanding the validity of judgments and comparison and how it helps us to make sense of reality. Because many people who are infected with the New Age bullshit mind virus, this huge deception in our current time, believe that you can't choose one thing from another, which is what discernment and intellect, which is a capacity of being a human being. You can't judge things, you can't assess things, you can't diagnose things, you can't determine what's right from wrong. They want to invalidate being human and just become a robot who believes in a mind control, mind virus that has them living out specific behavioral and habitual mechanisms that aren't even in alignment with truth, right, good, love, morality, natural law. The New Age deception of no judgments allows people to believe whatever they want, create a fantasy reality, and just be perfectly content, comfortable, feeling good about believing in lies, deceptions, and illusions. So I'll begin with the article. Some people think judging is wrong, even though to judge that themselves they are judging, which makes their conceptions, conclusions, and judgment a doublethink delusion itself. Some people think all judging comes from the negative ego of selfish personal attempts to make oneself look better than others. This is not true judging. Those who think all judgments come from this domain of attempted superiority are fooling themselves because they do not accurately understand the tool at their availability and are in a place of ignorance to understand its value and continuous use in life. Judging comes from looking at things, analyzing, criticizing, differentiating, distinguishing, relating, corresponding, comparing, and using your intellect, intuition, and conscience to discern, consider, weigh, distinguish, evaluate, assess, diagnose, associate, identify, and draw sound conclusions from critical thinking and good sense, to determine what is right, good and true, compared to what is wrong, bad, and false. It's basically common sense if you listen to and have a developed and awakened conscience and heart, and have a mind with developed tools to prevent you from being fooled, conned, tricked, duped, deceived, mind-controlled, etc. If you don't do your thinking for yourself, then you are running someone else's program and will not be able to judge reality accurately, given this program's influence on what you accept as, quote, true, and therefore affect the expressions of consciousness and way you live your life. There are many mind virus programs that inhibit accurate observation and assessment of reality, what is truth, and the more conditioning and deceptions you have bought into, the more your path will be directed for you towards an end that is in line with their goals. Judging is part of the solution to this problem. So there's two accurate quotes on what accurate judgment is. Don't just judge, but judge justly. Stop judging by appearances, but judge justly. If you don't understand yet, you will, that is, if you are being honest with yourself. The etymology for the word judgment has court-based definitions of trials, quote legal, quote court, but also more accurate non-establishment, non-authoritarian based definitions. Please forget about the state-controlled authority to sentence people type of definition and think of it in the way that I am talking about in a general sense. So, judgment in etymology can be traced to meaning capacity for making decisions, a diagnosis, a discernment, and that's in the etymology. You can go look at that. And here is what Mark Passio has to say about diagnosis. Diagnosis means by way of knowledge. So by way of knowledge, we will make a diagnosis. We will find out what is wrong. Then we are in a position of power through that knowledge to then take appropriate action to correct that wrong. That is called wisdom. Wisdom is what you do with what you know, applied knowledge for the right reasons. The root of judgment, judge, also means to regard, consider. It's about looking at things, observation, in honesty to see them as they really are. Judge is a compound of jus or jus, which is right or law, which is where the word just comes from, and combined with dicer, which is to say, and that's the root for our word diction. It is to speak the law with a capital L, not lowercase l, not man's law. Natural law, universal cosmic natural moral law. That is the law that one uses to make accurate, correct, optimal, valid, moral, right, good, true judgments in life about our choices, decisions, actions, and behaviors, and those of others we can observe. Not many people truly understand natural law, and as a result, not many people are able to make valid, accurate, optimal judgments in alignment with natural law principles of truth. There are black-robed Saturnian judges who violate natural law and uphold delusional man's law. In the etymology of just, it's about righteous, being righteous in the eyes of God, being upright, equitable, impartial, justifiable, reasonable, righteous, sincere. It's apparently comes from a sacred formula, and it's rooted in the Proto-Indo-European use, which is law, and that's the higher law, natural law, moral law, not man's stupid laws. The etymology of diction comes from the Proto-Indo-European root of dike or dik, and that's to point out. And in Sanskrit, dik, D-I-C, comes from point out, show. And then in the Greek and German, it's to prove, and then you have digitus in Latin, which is a finger. So you're pointing at things, which is what the Sanskrit was, is to point out, to show. And it's, in Old English, tiken, to teach. And then at the end of judge, meant, so we just broke down judge, now we have meant, from the end of judgment. It's not really needed since the suffix ment is to indicate something done by the verb or action we're talking about. But if we consider green language, then ment, meant, is from the ablative singular of the Latin mens, mens, meaning mind, to think. So together, just and diction, which is the roots for judge, means to teach, show, prove, or point out what is just, right, equitable, upright, and lawful, capital L, law. A finger points things out, and to judge is to point out the law, natural law, which is right, good, and true. We can observe and point things out that are in harmony with natural law or in violation of natural law. With green language, just, diction, mind, just, diction, meant, so just, diction, mind, is to use the mind to point out what is right from wrong and rectify and make upright that which is not. From etymology, we can see that judgment is about showing, pointing out what is wrong from right, and then rectifying those wrongs and making things right again. It's the same with the alchemical vitriol. Dissolve and wear down the lies, deceptions, illusions, wrongdoings, make them known, show them to be something not to be respected. It's all about morality, right from wrong, natural law, truth, love, good, etc. In looking at synonyms from a thesaurus, we get various meanings in regards to judgment in general and when judgments are done accurately with respect to reality. So these are the words that represent accurate judgments. We have acumen, acuteness, apprehension, astuteness, awareness, brains, capacity, comprehension, discernment, discrimination, experience, genius, grasp, incisiveness, ingenuity, intelligence, intuition, keenness, knowledge, mentality, penetration, perception, percipience, perspicacity, prudence, quickness, range, rationality, reach, readiness, reasoning, sagacity, sanity, sapience, savvy, sense, sharpness, shrewdness, sophistication, soundness, taste, understanding, wisdom, wit. And when we get judgments wrong, there are antonyms which express this as well. And they are ignorance, inanity, misjudgment, stupidity. So judgments can be properly understood for the tool it is meant to be. If we fail to observe and discern correctly, it is only ourselves to blame for being incorrect in misjudging and ignorant of an aspect we fail to perceive. And perhaps, as a result, we appear inane or stupid since we're acting out these flawed judgments. We can develop our observational skills, increase our conscious awareness, and judge things for what they are, and raise our level of consciousness through attainment of more truth, reality, and what is. When people call out judgmental, as if it's some valid logical reason to invalidate or dismiss a statement, it isn't. Being judgmental is making judgments. What are valid judgments to make? Judgments are about what is right and what is wrong. Judgments are about morality. Hence, judgmental is making moral judgments. So thank you for calling me judgmental, because I have the capacity to distinguish right from wrong, and I'm calling it out. I'm calling out the bullshit. So if you want to call me judgmental, thank you. I'll take it as a compliment, but other than that, you're just trying to avoid the issue and just trying to characterize it in a negative way. In our current degenerate society of mind control conditioning to engage in wrongdoings while attempting to fabricate them into, quote, rights, we can see how people like to shout judgmental whenever they can. They use this word to attempt to invalidate right from wrong because they are not living in alignment with right, good, truth, love, morality, etc. People do not like to hear about the wrongs being done in the world, and certainly not about the wrongs they are a part of. So remember, whenever someone calls you judgmental because you are pointing out right from wrong, they are just trying to shut you up because they don't want to face the truth. It is that simple. Anyone who tries to invalidate or dismiss something you say by labeling it judgment or judgmental when you're actually speaking truth and morality and right and wrong is trying to manipulate you. They have no valid response. It's an attempt to disqualify the validity of what you say through emotional mind control of a word, judgment, by representing it as a negative and therefore invalidate the argument. The only valid criticism on judgments is when they are 1, incorrect or inaccurate, or 2, based on appearances of other superficial aspects that have nothing to do with right and wrong. So I'll just read a quote that I found in one of my files about how this judgments tie into the Dualistic Conceptual Framework and polarities and how to understand it all, which is what I've been trying to refine and get in depth and in extreme detail about in my Dualistic Conceptual Framework and the other articles, and how it relates to the frequency of perceptions and truth. So here's a quote from a site. As a consequence of identifying relationships between these polarized groups of information within different subjects, we also develop the capacity to form a wide-ranging perception of the world that encompasses a wide variety of topics and subjects. It develops within us the ability to take a global view, much like the way interdisciplinary studies operate within academic institutions. This global view allows us to make connections between seemingly unrelated topics, make judgments, arrive at conclusions, and forecast things that one wouldn't normally be able to make with a more limited view. So that's explaining judgments right there, how they relate to polarity, the dualistic framework, identifying relationships, creating correspondences, connections, making patterns, developing a global view, which is a holistic, big picture understanding. The guy just said it all right there, and if you understand it, you understand it. If you don't, well, you don't, because you don't have the eyes to see or the ears to hear. We can make fairly valid judgments of what is around and within us, as long as our information comes from relevant and accurate perceptions of reality. What is the truth? The irrelevant perceptions and appearances of fashion, clothes, cars, homes, club memberships, career status, or anything superficial that some people use to determine if someone is better than another are false judgments because they do not deal with right or wrong. This is why we should not judge on external appearances of these superficial things, but on the external expressions of consciousness that actually do matter. These are the actions and behaviors we engage in that either produce harm or don't, are wrong or are not wrong, immoral or moral. One may still gain insights about another's current psychological state through their attachment to these superficial illusions, but a person is most accurately represented by their current thoughts, words, speech, writing, behaviors, and actions. The expression of consciousness of emotion is felt within, but the feelings do not necessarily express themselves physiologically on the exterior. Emotions remain mostly exclusively within an individual unless externally expressed or manifest in a physiologically observable way. If someone does something wrong and we point out what it is, then we are not doing anything wrong by using the power of observation, analysis, and critical thinking to draw a sound conclusion that makes sense. We recognize what someone does is wrong because we know what wrongs are. It's simple. The ego, personality, identity attachment to what a person does as actions and behaviors doesn't like being shown its error and manifests reactions to indicate this. Emotions are our moral guidance system when used properly, our internal compass for heading in the right direction and doing what is right. Attuning ourselves to our moral compass is made possible when our left and right brains are operating in conjunction, in harmony, with the neocortex. Harmony of the two hemispheres allows us to engage the midbrain, the limbic brain, in its proper role as a guidance system for emotions. The limbic brain sends feedback to the cerebral cortex, the part of the brain that we make judgments with, for decision making and for discernment. Choosing one thing among many, and that is to say, making a decision. That's the point. That's what judgments are for. That's what discernment's for. That's what assessment's for. Evaluation, diagnosis, it's all the same thing. Since accurately judging through observation to discern one thing from another thing and accurately describing anything is perfectly fine, and we do it countless times in a day, the reaction from someone who will immediately respond with the word judgment, judgmental, etc., as if it's wrong to evaluate and point out what is actually wrong, immoral, bad, harmful, etc., or who will react in a defensive way to dismiss, avoid, ignore, deny, or reject the truth, will indicate to you that there is an ego personality identity attachment made to what is being examined. Instead of recognizing it as the truth, they label it as a judgment in a pejorative sense or use some other dismissive tactic. Some people have been conditioned to think that we can only judge something that has nothing to do with anyone else. That is to say, that as long as we are observing, discerning, analyzing, critically thinking, and talking or writing about something that someone else isn't falsely attached to through their misconception of their own identity, then we are okay to go. Our judgments will likely be accepted. It comes down to believing we can't talk about other people and tell them the truth because that would be judging them. They consider that as long as you aren't judging someone, what they do, what they think, etc., then you can judge. The truth is, people judge themselves. All we need to do is see. Here I have a quote from the Ringing Cedar series books. This is from the New Civilization book. It says, God has shone forth in the universe with a new thought. It is not only a great energy, but a judge as well. Much has been said in treatises and legends about God's judgment. It is now coming softly and invisibly, God's judgment. It touches all the people now living on the planet, and every man will be his own judge. If you're familiar with the Truth is Love or Higher Self articles, you can understand this as a common force of truth, love, good, right, moral, natural law, higher self, higher will, spirit, God, etc. If you don't understand that, you can read those two articles, which I link in this article. Natural law is cause and effect, and there are consequences to our negative behavioral manifestations of consciousness, action and reaction. The judgment of our actions is beholden in the effects manifested that we can see. Each man, when they use the word man, is a reference to man as being in this book, as a being in this book, not just man versus woman. It's just man as a being. Since the word human comes from humus, the soil, and isn't as dignified. So they chose to call humans mankind, like mankind. Each human judges themselves by their own actions and the consequences of the effects they manifest as a result. Natural law, cause and effect, etc., will be a reciprocation of what we put out. What we sow, we shall reap, at some point, in some form. Natural law judgment is our own judgment we create when we choose to behave and act in certain ways that are contrary, oppositional, conflicting, unaligned, and non-integrated with truth, love, good, right, morality, natural law, higher self, higher will, spirit, God, etc. So that's what it means by, in the quote, and every man will be his own judge. Because we judge ourselves by what we do. Learning what is true is better for you. Now there's a good rhyme to remember. Learning what is true is better for you. Learning what is true is better for you. Always. So the more you say, the more you do, the more I see of you. All we have to do is observe. Observation reveals what people do themselves by their own actions and behaviors. The truth is revealed to those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. We can speak the truth we recognize and understand, although others often do not want to hear it due to their attachment to falsity, lies, deceptions, and delusions. Truth, then, can help us recognize the wrong we are a part of and choose to no longer participate in it. That is what making accurate diagnoses, judgments, assessments, evaluations is about. We have to learn to let go of our attachment to illusions upon which we base aspects of our ego personality identity construct. It's who we think we are, because our actions do represent who we are. So when our actions get criticized and get demonstrated for being wrong and participating in evil, then we don't like that because it's an attack on ourselves because we're so identified with our actions. When all we have to do is make the choice to change our behaviors, and then we won't be doing any wrong anymore, and we won't have to get upset and offended and insult ourselves, insult our higher self, our higher will, because we're going to be doing what's right. It's all just facing the truth and aligning with it. It's simple, 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 once you understand it. Since we can judge, and if the judgment is accurate, then it indicates that the person who does not want to accept a certain conclusion may be lacking information, preferring to call it judgment or use another dismissive tactic. By basing our decisions, judgments, and choices on a lack of information, with attachment to falsity we have accepted and identified with, we will be more inclined to reject the information that upsets our self-conceptualization, the self-image we have constructed about ourselves, which is part of the ego personality identity construct. If we can dissociate our identity from the illusory constructs of belief we are attached to, then we may be more willing to honestly look at information, gain knowledge, and develop an understanding, thereby increasing our conscious awareness and evolving consciousness towards greater attainment and embodiment of truth, love, good, etc. We are all ignorant to some degree, some no more than others in some subjects, and the reverse is true. We approximate degrees of probable certainty in specific perspectives and perceptions of truth, by removing contradictory information from the overall big picture holistic understanding of how things interrelate, interconnect, and correspond in the great pattern. We have to be willing to doubt. If this makes you feel insecure, that is perfectly good, because it means you doubt what you believed and accepted previously. We cannot progress if we continue to accept what we were told or what we have become attached to as the real truth. When someone presents something that has validity, I check into it because I use doubt in a useful way through apophatic learning. I end up learning more about what something is not in the end, and confirm with greater certainty the conclusion I had drawn from the already existing connections in the pattern recognition of how things correspond. One more piece is added. Another connection is added to the web to make it stronger. For some things that I cannot verify through my own experience, I can be wrong about, and doubt can help me recognize it and align my perceptions with what is reality, truth. The truth hurts when you are not ready for it. That is why the ego reacts in these ways when it feels under attack from the truth. Because that would shatter the illusions it is attached to, and a piece of false identity would possibly be washed away. And that means diminishment of the ego personality identity construct many of us are so attached to. The denial of truth in others may seem like they want you to feel bad about your attempt to shed light on the darkness, to speak truth against the deceptions, for being correct, for being right. There are many tactics to avoid facing one's own shadows, darkness, demons, and negative manifestations of being and living that cause harm to innocent, sentient, animate beings. Here I have 3 quotes that are also included in the Truth is Love article about the hard truths that we need to face. The further a society drifts from truth, the more they will hate those that speak it. And that's from Orwell. So yeah, people don't like people that speak truth because it's uncomfortable and it makes them feel bad. And all they want to do is feel good about themselves and their delusional self-concept and self-image about their position in reality and what they participate in. They don't want to believe that they actually participate in wrongdoing, because I would make them wrong and I would make them bad and I would make them a participant in evil. And people just can't face that. Another quote, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. That's from Friedrich Nietzsche. The only people who are mad at you for speaking the truth are those people who are living a lie. And that's from Unknown. I understood why New Agers are really into the no judgment thing due to Greg Braden's Divine Matrix videos. New Agers actually fear judgments. Judgments will create negative feelings inside of you, and these negative feelings will create dis-ease and diseases. Hence, do not judge things, just be positive, and don't let that negative in, or else you're going to be in ill health. Do not face reality. Do not feel the truth about the wrongdoings occurring in the world that you may be partly responsible for. Do not use your emotional compass to face yourself, whatever you do. That's the last thing you want to do is face yourself. It's all about remaining in a feel-good sense, afraid of becoming ill with manifestations of consciousness that represent your internal compass telling you when something is good or bad, right or wrong. When you deaden your ability to feel the negative polarity of emotions that are produced from facing reality in its negative, horror and darkness, you limit your development in consciousness as well as limiting your ability to feel what is right from wrong. The continued negation of facing reality as it is, or the continued negation of feeling reactions to reality's negative manifestations, will result in a more dormant ability to detect wrongdoings with the emotional compass and neocortex feedback. You will have trained and conditioned yourself to not feel the negative representations of external stimulus. You will have trained yourself to not be a full human being, denying a part of what helps us navigate reality. That's the emotional compass, and it's important, and you got to feel it. You need judgment, discernment, differentiation, distinction, critical thinking, and the ability to draw conclusions from existing differences and similarities. You need to be able to look at new information honestly, even if it is contrary to what you currently have judged to be the way something is. You can be wrong. Do not let your incorrect judgments hold you back from discovering new, more accurate perceptions and perspectives of reality. Building up from solid, core, foundational principles of truth is the way we can verify if our judgments, assessments, diagnoses, discernments, analysis, and conclusions contain any contradictions at the core level. Many taking the spiritual path are often fooled into thinking they have transcended or conquered the ego. They accept fanciful pseudo-New Age thinking such as judgments are wrong, and they want to have this feel-good comfort by ignoring things. This is just the ego shifting into a new desire you have and further taking you off a true spiritual path by having a focus on selfish well-being, comfort feelings at the cost of ignoring truth. This is complete folly and misunderstanding of the spiritual path, the spiritual journey and the path towards truth. You need to be aware of things and you need to see them as they are and accept that as a reality. You use judgment to discern from your observations of what actually is and what is not. Some people think that by eliminating judgments that they will then no longer have to feel negative about things, but this is just ignoring what is and refusing to accept the current state of something. You can also see things as they are, judge them accurately, and not be fully absorbed in the negative emotional expression, but you recognize it is there and know that it's something, that it represents a negative recognition of something. You are the one creating the feeling through recognition of something. Do not simply ignore a reality that is hard to face because it makes you uncomfortable, because it removes the feel-goodness. Face it and choose to apply the law of neutralization to elevate yourself above the plane of effects and not have to be wrapped up in the rhythm of the pendulum of emotions. Do not let the emotions control you. Recognize it is there and what it is telling you about something. Feel the spectrum the emotional compass provides us with. The negative is a teacher. Not facing it will allow it to persist. The reason people espouse a teaching of do not judge is because of what that judgment does to you internally, the feeling it creates inside of you. Whatever you are afraid of lowers your consciousness. That's fear. And the reason you are afraid of it and do not look into it is because of the negative judgments you have preconceived of in your refusal to accept the truth and what is currently our reality. The negative is there. Judge it accurately. Your feelings of it are yours to control. Stop hiding from what is, just to remain in comfort and feel good about your perception of reality, yourself, or your behaviors and actions that create harm against other sentient animate beings. People incorrectly, erroneously, and falsely judge from the perspective, worldview, and mindset of the status quo, the condition of the way things currently are, of the way they currently believe things have to be. It's acceptance and perpetuation of the conform to, groupthink, hive mind, propagated mind virus. When you're working under manipulations, lies, deceptions, and illusions, then your judgments will most likely be incorrect and inaccurate, and this is when it is incorrect to judge because you're judging from falsehood and not looking at reality as it is and not accepting the truth. You can judge, but your judgments will not likely be valid. When you have truth, then you can accurately make judgments, because then you see reality as it is, the negative and the positive, the good and the bad, the beauty and the horror, and then you accept that this is currently how it is, and you do not lie to yourself to pretend that things are not this way. The conscious mind doesn't want to deal with it. It doesn't want to deal with conflicting information. It doesn't want to deal with the trauma of facing the evil and wrong you are a part of. it is easier to ignore it. Any horrific event triggers trauma. The enslavement, exploitation, harm, suffering, violence, or murder of innocent sentient beings you participate in is horrific and traumatizing. It is easier to have an emotional reaction so that you don't have to deal with it in the conscious mind. Just react emotionally and avoid dealing with the trauma consciously. And it goes into your subconscious. There you go. Poof, problem solved. You don't have to deal with it. Fear of truth causes this because we are in rejection and denial of truth. The fear, rejection, and denial of what we are doing. The rejection of alignment with what is truth, love, good, right, moral, natural law, etc. It doesn't make sense to you that you are participating in evil. You can't accept that you are a part of this. Therefore, it must not be this way. The trauma of what you do through your actions and behaviors is submerged into the subconscious and not dealt with. When someone brings up your participation in it, you may react negatively because you don't want to deal with the truth, or you act calm because you are quite content believing whatever you want about yourself, living in a delusional fantasy reality to remain comfortable and feel good about yourself and the self-image you have created. I don't want to deal with what I'm doing and what I'm responsible for. I would rather ignore it, avoid it, or outright deny and reject that I am a part of evil and wrong in the world. It is trauma. You are participating in enslavement, exploitation, harm, suffering, violence, or murder of innocent, sentient, animate beings that did you no harm. It is traumatic to face the reality of that fact, of what you're participating in, the Holocaust, the huge billions of animals murdered each year that you're participating in. That's traumatic. People don't want to face that trauma. Poof, they put it out of their mind through whatever means they can. Cognitive dissonance, dismissals, deflections, denial, rejection, avoidance, excuses, justifications, anything they can. They just don't want to face it because they're not emotionally mature enough. They're not intellectually mature enough. They don't have a developed care for truth. They don't have a developed conscience. They don't have a developed heart center. There's a lot that's undeveloped in them when they don't want to face the truth of what they participate in. There's a lot of inner work of facing the shadow that needs to be done. When you don't deal with the truth, when you avoid consciously processing it, and the trauma of that truth is pushed into the subconscious mind to avoid dealing with the discomfort, it allows us to continue to go on with our lives and not deal with reality. It's a protective mechanism to sustain the current structure of the ego personality identity construct. This can manifest as cognitive dissonance, where we deflect by bringing in non sequiturs, change the topic, or try to excuse or justify our wrongdoings in irrational ways. Conflicting information about you is presented and cannot be accepted for the truth of what it really is. So, we need to invent and fabricate wrongs into delusional, quote, rights. The idea of not judging is to not make yourself feel negative and not create dis-ease. It is people's own insecurities that prevent them from accepting the truth, from facing reality and accepting the current condition. If someone makes a statement or judgment that is right and correct, and you get offended, that is still your issue. You are offended by the truth because you do not want to face something within you that you fear to admit. It's fear. It's being afraid. And that's the constriction of consciousness. It's not love, it's fear. You're not embracing truth. You're not caring for truth. It's the opposite. And that's my pet peeve. When people reject truth and they're just in complete denial of it, it's like talking to a wall. All you're going to get back is bullshit. Lies that they believe in. They're going to regurgitate those lies to your face. I don't want to hear it. Sorry, but screw you. I'm not interested in your lies. Go do the inner work and face the truth and embrace it. So here's a quote that I quoted in the Truth is Love article. If someone corrects you and you feel offended, then you have an ego problem. You're the one with the ego problem. You want to project your own inability to face the truth, your own denial. You want to project that back onto the one who's making you face yourself, and you want to call them, oh, you're judgmental. Oh, you're making judgments. Oh, judgments are bad. Oh, you're an ego. Oh, you're trying to be superior. And all these other bullshit things to try to invalidate it. And oh, you're insulting me. You're offending me. No, you're insulting yourself and you're offending yourself, as I've explained in the Truth is Love article, audio or video. You insult your higher self, your higher will, which is what is right, good, and true, which is love and rightness and goodness and morality and natural law. You insult yourself by your own behaviors and actions. Time to face yourself and let go of the bullshit and stop believing in lies and stop regurgitating lies to other people when they bring it up to you. Your ego does not like being wrong. It wants to be the boss that is always right. The ego tries to prevent you from evolving, from changing, from bettering yourself by getting you emotionally involved, under emotional mind control, ignoring the actual truth delivered, and focusing only on your reaction to that information. It keeps you from seeing and hearing accurately. You don't listen to the information. You only react because of the effect it has on your ego, personality, identity, attachment. Saying something is judgmental, taking sides, comparing, choosing, and other dismissive tactics is trying to diminish the validity of truth by attempting to distract and deflect from the issue through a negative characterization of what is being presented. Here's an extreme example to demonstrate some issues. That is the objective difference between right and wrong that we can all determine. If someone kills little children and eats them, do we not see what they are doing? Can we not discern, weigh, consider, distinguish, evaluate, differentiate, assess, diagnose, think critically, and analyze? This is what judgment truly is. Accept the current condition without fear. The avoidance of not wanting to feel negative, of wanting to stay in an ignorant state of bliss, of feel-good comfort, does not serve anyone. You sacrifice truth in order to remain in a feel-good state. It is stepping on truth and pushing it down, spitting on truth through outright denial and rejection of truth. It's saying, screw you, truth. I get to decide what is true. We should learn how to judge correctly, not fear judging. It is part of life in this ego personality identity construct. By no means am I saying to tell people that they are worthless or whatnot because of their current limitations in accepting truth and reality for what it currently is. But people have to understand the need to look at their darkness and shadow, sublimate and transmute it, and bring in the light, truth, goodness, rightness, love, morality, etc. You are not worthless. You have great power and value. But you have to accept truth and align with it to empower yourself. When someone says, that's a judgment, well, yes it is. But so what? It's like saying, that's an apple, that's an orange, etc. You're pointing out what something is. Okay, what is the relevance though? You judge to point out that someone is judging. So you're going to judge me and say that I'm judging. Shall I say that you are judging, and then you're going to say that I'm judging again, and then we can repeat that I'm judging and you're judging, and it'll just go on into infinity? No. That's idiocy. And that's what people who just like to use the word judgment as an invalidatory foundational point to void anything truth and anything about the wrong that they're engaging. They're just behaving like idiots because they don't have judgment developed. They're in the folly of the stupid judgments. They're not able to make accurate judgments. Pointing out judgment is like saying, that is a cup. Yeah, that's a cup. So that's judgment. You want to point out that it's judgment? Yep, that is indeed judgment. And what is your point? I made my point with my judgment. What is the point of you identifying and judging it as a judgment? Apart from trying to negate or invalidate what I said, there is no point. It's ridiculous. It's people who don't even understand how to navigate reality, who don't even understand the value of judgment, and they just like to throw words around in order to remain in comfort, feel good, denial, and rejection of truth so that they can continue to perpetuate and live in the fantasy delusions they've constructed about their worldview and reality and their position in it, their self-image and their self-concept. It's just completely asinine behavior. Everyone judges. Get real and deal with it. Judging is discerning, a part of the intellect, which everyone has and uses every day, some more accurately and some less accurately. It is part of our existence. To worry about judging is to judge yourself for having judgments, and that will put you down a negative path, obsessing over nothing. Everyone judges every day. Reading this is a judgment process. Listening to this is a judgment process. Everything you do is a judgment process. We pick and choose every day. We pick one thing from the other. We choose one thing from another. We make decisions. Anyways, it's absolutely ridiculous that I have to even explain what judgments are. That some people are so confused. They bought into all these lies. They're infected with these mind viruses deep within them that they will not let go of because it's so comforting to sustain this belief that judgments are bad in order to maintain your ability to believe whatever you want and create fantasy delusions to live in. That's what people do, and is, oh, well, the plants feel. Plants are like animals. No, they're not. We're like animals. We're animate. Animals are animate. We have brains. They have brains. We have tongues. They have tongues. Mouths, nose. We have red blood. They have red blood. Oh, but people, no, animals are like plants. Plants feel. Well, if animals are like plants and plants feel, and that's your validation to eat animals because you can eat plants, then it's perfectly valid to eat other humans. Your rationality is absurd. It's illogical. It's fallacious. But yet people will use it and they think that they're being logical. They think that they're making sense. They think that they understand things. They think that they're, in connection with the source. I'm in contact with the source. I get my information from source. I don't need to read. I don't need to do anything. Yet they're in completely asinine, absurd stupidity modalities of thinking. They don't even know how to think. Yet they think they do. They need complete reprogramming and complete deconditioning into the bullshit, lies, deceptions, and manipulations and mind control that they've bought into. There's so much work that they need to do that they're so entrenched in the negative ego, personality, identity, attachment to all these lies that they have no idea how submerged they are in darkness. They have no idea how deep they are in darkness. So, stop lying to yourself. You do judge. Get over it. So that's my article. I hope you enjoyed it. Please use it as a tool to educate New Agers if they're willing to look at it. I know a New Ager who doesn't want to look at anything I write pretty much, doesn't really care to learn. They think that they don't need to read, they don't need to learn, they don't need to go through doors that are being opened, they don't need to drink from water of truth. They're already full. They don't have any thirst. They don't need to walk through any doors. They already know as much as they know. They don't want to learn from other people. They just want to learn from their belief that, nature's going to teach me everything and God's going to teach me everything because I'm so damn connected to Source. Yeah, you're so connected to Source. That's why you're participating, consenting, and supporting the enslavement, exploitation, harm, suffering, violence, and murder of innocent, sentient, animate beings who did you no harm. Yeah, that's why you're so connected to the Source, because you're doing that. Right. Keep lying to yourself. Keep bullshitting yourself. Keep living in a fantasy reality, believing you're so in tune with the higher self when you're so far from it. Your behaviors and actions demonstrate that yourself. You judge yourself. All I have to do is see it, because I have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. So thank you very much for everyone for listening. I hope people find value in this audio, in the article. Maybe I'll do a video. But enjoy it. Spread it around. If you don't like it, oh well, let me know. Comment. Do whatever. I'm here just to try to provide understanding for people, to help understandings to a greater degree of refinement, to get some more high definition on our definitions and our understandings of words. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to define things accurately so people get an accurate understanding. So this is judgments and how they relate to the New Age deception and confusion that so many people have. And with that, I'll wish you a nice weekend, and until next time, bye-bye.